Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to this session of readings from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Today, we are going to continue reading from the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is titled Transcendental Knowledge. The verses we'll read today are verses 16 and 17. But before we begin, as is the wonderful tradition of our ancient civilization, I'll first offer respectful obeisances to the spiritual master and to all spiritual masters. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and the spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him and to all spiritual masters. So, with that, it is time to begin reading today's quota of 2 verses. I hope all of you, or most of you, have been able to procure a Bhagavad Gita as it is, so that our readings become more fruitful and more useful for all of us, because it is useful to have a text in front of us when we do our readings. So I will now read verse 16, which goes like this. Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayopi atra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshyami yajgyatva mokshyasye shubhat. Translation. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. So, just to do a quick recap, in the third chapter, the Lord had said that activity is the nature of no. In the second chapter, the Lord had explained that the soul is eternal, and that is what actually gives life to the body, which is actually nothing but dead matter. And since the nature of the soul is active, in the third chapter, it was explained that everyone, once the soul is engaged in the body is also activated, and the body and mind, the gross and subtle body, must also be active. Now that activity, because the soul now identifies with but however, when the soul is engaged in the body and comes to this material world, it comes under the influence of the three energies of sattva, rajas, and tamas, which governs actions. But then the special thing about being engaged in the human body, unlike animal bodies, is there is a minute free will. So the Lord instructs that the minute free will should be utilized to perform all activities as yajna. And then the laws of material nature, which include the law of karma, the impact of that is not there. So Arjuna is actually saying that he would, he didn't want to fight, because even though he knew that the Pandavas, and especially he was confident of his skills, and especially with Lord Krishna with him, he knew that they would be victorious, but at what cost? So he was thinking, what's going to happen to society? So what's going to happen to society. He was full of compassion. He didn't want to kill his seniors, Bhishma, Pitama, Drona, and all his friends and relatives. And in both sides, they would get killed. And then he was saying that if what at what cost do I need to procure my kingdom? I mean, I would be losing all my near and dear ones. And then what? I mean, how will I enjoy my kingdom? And what is the point? I would rather go to the forest. And then he was thinking of what's going to happen to society. And then he was thinking that he would incur so many sinful reactions for killing so many people. So it was better. I mean, rather than procure temporary, procure power and kingdom, which is only temporary because our body itself is temporary, and then to suffer in hell for millions of years, because that is the punishment one receives for killing, especially killing relatives and seniors and children and juniors. So, and then, what at what cost? As a king, he was thinking at what cost to society? Because the whole society would be destroyed. Adharma will proliferate because the seniors, the patriarchs, those who trained the women, they would not be there, and so there would be all kinds of, unsuitable marriages, and in fact, not just unsuitable marriages. Women may be exploited, and then Varna Shankara, unwanted progeny, would proliferate. And then when there is unwanted progeny, obviously they will be untrained. They will not be trained properly. As it is, the women will not be trained properly, the women who train the future generations. Then society will degrade, and if society degrades, then this dharma. Where will who will teach them about dharma? What is dharma? What is adharma? And then they will not know what are the laws of nature, and then even the oblation, and the rituals that are meant for the ancestors, the souls of ancestors, that will also not be performed, and the ancestors will also fall down, and that will have reactions on the families. So this, and then so he's totally confused, and he's saying, I don't know what I should do, what I should not do, whether I should act or not act, or just leave everything and take sannyas, or live like a beggar, and things like that. So in that context, actually, the Lord is explaining that that there is when we are in this material world and we identify with the material body, there is a system with which, by which the actual purpose of human life, which the soul encaged in a body forgets, that can be revived, and that way one can do activity which is the nature of the soul, and therefore the body acts, and the activity will be such that it will be gradually, like it can it will facilitate, rather than the soul acting for satisfaction of one's own senses and getting embroiled in more and more suffering because of the law of karma, to actually work according to one's dharma, and then not be the consciousness will get elevated, and for this, and understand that what is and revive its original consciousness. The soul will revive its origin, understand the actual purpose of life is to reconnect with the Supreme and to serve the Supreme with love, Vishnu Aradhyate. And this is actually the stepping stone of human civilization, for which he has for which there is Varnashrama dharma, which where every soul will act according to the natural tendencies, according to one's natural classification, whether one is an intellectual, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra. And then if one does duties prescribed in that manner, which is prescribed according to, with the understanding of what is the nature or the natural tendency of that particular person, and while acting like that, fulfilling one's needs of the body, of the mind, and the soul, one gets elevated, and one gets to the stage of Bhagavad Dharma, which is which from where one actually is able to fully fulfill the actual purpose of human life. So then he had said, but I am not So you can do, and but I'm not, unlike you, who human beings who get embroiled in the law of karma. I have provided the system of Varnashrama dharma for you to elevate your consciousness uh, and reach the stage of Krishna consciousness, but I am not a part of it. And then he goes on to say that when people have acted with the understanding of the transcendent, because the Lord is transcendental, and then when people have acted with understanding of this transcendental nature of Lord Krishna, then they have become liberated. So, therefore, Arjuna, rather than running away, you should perform your duty following in the footsteps of the liberated soul, understanding the Lord's transcendental nature and therefore following the Lord's instructions as per the natural tendencies that has been prescribed in the Dharma Shastras, and by doing so, that the sinful reactions that he's so afraid of will, he will not suffer from that. And then further, he now explains that what exactly is karma and what is akarma. Karma. So he says that even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is karma. That means what is action, and what is inaction. So now I shall explain to you what is action and what is inaction, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. Because Arjun was afraid of, of being, of misfortune if he killed his near and dear ones. In the Purport, Prabhupada explains, action in Krishna consciousness has to be executed in accord with the examples of previous bona fide devotees. This is recommended in the 15th verse, where Lord Krishna says that all liberated souls in ancient times acted with the understanding of my transcendental nature. So you should also perform your duty following in their footsteps. Why such action should not be independent will be explained in the text to follow. To act in Krishna consciousness, one has to follow the leadership of authorized persons who are in line of disciplic succession, as explained in the beginning of this chapter. The system of Krishna consciousness was first narrated to the sun god, and this was explained in the first verse of this chapter. Then the sun god explained it to his son Manu, and Manu explained it to his son Ikshvaku, and the system is current on this earth from that very remote time. Therefore, one has to follow in the footsteps of previous authorities in the line of disciplic succession. Otherwise, even the most intelligent men will be bewildered regarding the standard actions of Krishna consciousness. For this reason, the Lord decided to instruct Arjuna in Krishna consciousness directly. Because of the direct instruction of the Lord to Arjuna, anyone who follows in the footsteps of Arjuna is certainly not bewildered. So, to give a very bad material example, if one is a doctor, one follows the precedent, or if one is a lawyer, one follows the precedent that is shown by experts and seniors. If one is so that way, one doesn't go wrong. So similarly here, when one follows as instructed by the Lord, those who have followed the instructions of the Lord and achieve the actual purpose of getting the human body, then we will not go wrong, and then there will be no degradation of the consciousness, and post leaving the body there will no degradation of the soul of transmigrating into a body of a lower species, from which the struggle for existence again just becomes worse and worse. I mean, to get an animal body is not very desirable at all, because the animal body by its very nature is limited. There is no free will that is available to the human body. It is said that one cannot ascertain the ways of religion simply by imperfect experimental knowledge. So one can just keep experimenting. This whole there are so many subtle and gross and subtle aspects of how to properly perform our duties. that simply by experiment, one cannot reach this perfection. It is explained here by Prabhupada, because the principles of religion can only be laid down by the Lord Himself and properly understood by liberated persons. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 3rd chapter, 19th verse. So, what is dharma? Dharma is that which is laid down by the Lord Himself, like law is the command of the sovereign. So, no one can manufacture a religious principle by imperfect speculation. So, one must, so therefore, many people tend to think that, that because the Paramatma is within us, which is rightly so, we tend to think that we ourselves are God. So it no doubt that we are godly because we are made, it is said, in the image of God. But when we are under the influence of the three modes and therefore illusioned, uh, it is very misleading to think that we are God, so we can do whatever we want without understanding what actually is the purpose of life, and what is the nature of this material world, and so on and so forth. So, many of us think that we are God. So if we are if we do as we wish, then if we just reasonably so-called good human beings, that is good enough. But then once one reads about this, then this kind of once one reads the instruction of the Lord, then one understands that one may do as one thinks is right, but then like the law of gravity, which operates upon us irrespective of whether we acknowledge or believe the law of gravity exists or not, the law of karma, whether we believe it exists or not, it does. And it has its impact on our lives. And how complicated this particular law is. It's very difficult even for those who have, researched on it to understand. So, but then by reading from and understanding from proper leaders who have devoted themselves in this line, and who have, in the 15th verse itself, as Lord has said, been have come to the understanding of the Lord's transcendental nature and acted accordingly by following in their footsteps. We are trying to follow. We are in, as human beings, we act in the right direction. So that is action, as explained by Lord Krishna, and as further elaborated upon in the purport by Prabhupada, which is based on Shastra. So one must, so therefore it is said that what is dharma? Dharma is that which is laid out by the Lord Himself. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. So no one can manufacture a religious principle by imperfect speculation. We are too small, actually, to speculate and think that we are, as we wish we will do, because if left to ourselves, if we do not refer to any scientific text, we would think that the sun is a tiny disk, because our senses are not perfect and we are too tiny to actually understand the vastness of this universe. We don't even understand our whole human bodies, let alone this earth, which is insignificant part of creation. So we don't even understand the solar system, which itself is insignificant part of the universe. So if we tend to think that we know what is dharma without any guidance, then that is actually the chance of actually fulfilling the purpose of human existence and getting out of this misery of birth, old age, disease, and death, out of the cycle, is not practical, is not a reality. So therefore, the Lord says we must follow in the footsteps of great authorities like Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Manu, the Kumaras, Kapila, Prahlada, Bhishma, Sukadeva Goswami, Yamaraja, Janaka, and Bali Maharaja. By mental speculation, one cannot ascertain what is religion or self-realization. just by mental speculation, we would never be able to understand that the sun is a huge globe and has actually practically 96% of the solar system. And the weight of the sun takes up, the mass of the sun is 96% of the solar system. What would one, by mere speculation, without referring to texts and all that, looking at the sun, even understand that? So you see, similarly, one cannot really reach